Good evening and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the November 13th, 2018 meeting of the Downers Grove Village Council. It is my honor to call this meeting to order. If you haven't already done so, there are copies of our meeting agenda on a shelf conveniently located on either side of the room. You can pick up a copy and follow along with tonight's proceedings. There will be multiple opportunities for public comment, both with respect to all items that are on our agenda tonight, as well as a segment under item 4, which is reserved for public comments of a general nature. At that point in the agenda, if anyone has any questions or comments of a general nature with respect to things that are not on tonight's agenda, we would invite you to please come up, let us know who you are, and welcome hearing from you at that time. But first, it is our proud custom to begin our meetings by reciting the Pledge of Allegiance, so we'd like to ask everyone present to rise and join us in reciting the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. I would now like to ask our fine village clerk, April Holden, to please call the roll.
Commissioner Wallace? Here. Commissioner Earl? Here. Commissioner Waldeck?
Here.
Commissioner White?
Here.
Commissioner Jose? Commissioner Barnett?
Here.
Mayor Tully?
Here. Thank you very much. That brings us to item 3, which pertains to minutes of past council meetings. We have 2 sets of minutes to approve tonight. Those are our regular council meeting minutes from our October 16th, 2018 meeting, and also executive session minutes from that same date. If there are no questions, comments, or corrections, I would ask for a motion to approve both sets of minutes, please.
Martelli, I move the council approve the meeting minutes from October 16th, both the regular meeting minutes and the executive session meeting minutes as presented.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Those meetings are approved. Before we move on to item 4, which is the advertised public comments, we have a special edition. As everyone knows, yesterday we observed Veterans Day, which was actually on Sunday, November 11th. And we had a couple things I want to do in recognition of Veterans Day and all the veterans in Downers Grove and throughout the country that serve our country and the armed forces so well. First is a proclamation in honor of our military veterans. Whereas Veterans Day is commemorated every year on November 11th to mark the armistice signed by the Allied nations and Germany, which took effect on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month in 1918. And whereas Veterans Day is intended to thank all veterans for their service to and acknowledge their contributions to our nation. And whereas the Village of Downers Grove is honored to pay tribute to the fallen, the missing, the wounded, the millions who have served and those awaiting their return, as well as the veterans who call Downers Grove their home. And whereas Downers Grove is proud to recognize the following village employees who have served or are currently serving in the military: Mike Baldwin, Jeffrey Canfield, Jim Edwards, Brian Janish, Sigmund Markowski, Jim Minute, Tom Powers, John Stober, Quinn Triplett, Kevin Zhu, and Mike Zhu. Now, therefore, I, Martin T. Tully, Mayor of the Village of Downers Grove, do hereby proclaim November 13th, 2018 as Downers Grove's salute to Military Veterans Day in the Village of Downers Grove, and call upon all residents to join me in honoring America's heroes. Related to that, I wanted to share with everyone that on November 11th, Veterans Day proper, the Garden Club of Downers Grove, as part of the national program of the National Garden Clubs, dedicated in conjunction with Alexander Bradley Burns American Legion Post 80, a Blue Star Memorial marker. If you go to the Alexander Bradley Burns Post 80, which is on the north part of Downers Grove on Saratoga Avenue, you can see the Blue Star Memorial marker. It is part of a program that has been around for quite some time, across thousands of miles of highway in our country, honoring our veterans, both past, present, and future. This dedication took place on Sunday at 11 o'clock a.m. It was a terrific ceremony honoring our veterans, and is actually the second Blue Star Memorial marker to have been placed and dedicated in the Village of Downers Grove. So if you haven't had a chance to see it, I would encourage folks to do so. The Garden Club of Downers Grove is, we're grateful to them for working along with the American Legion Post to make this installation. And we appreciate their dedication to veterans in our community. And in the conversations that took place, it was enlightening and encouraging to know that there are approximately 40 members of our community who are currently going out to serve in the armed forces, and that apparently is something that happens on an annual basis. So it's good to know that Downers Grove is well represented, and Downers Grove and the surrounding area is well represented in the Blue Star program. And for those who are currently serving in the military, you can tell because of the Blue Star that would be in the window, that you'll find in the window of the homes of the men and women who are serving in the armed forces and serving our community and serving our country. So I wanted to share that with everyone. And with that, we will then move to item 4, which, as previously described, pertains to public comments of a general nature. If there are any members of the audience that have any comments or questions of a general nature with respect to things that are not on tonight's agenda, I would invite you to please come up to the podium, let us know who you are, and we would welcome hearing from you. Good evening, welcome.
Good evening, thank you. I'm Christine Martin. Oops, good, sorry. Christine Martin, 701 Maple Avenue. I am co-chair of Friends of the Edwards House with Shannon Tully. And we are here tonight just to promote our Friends of the Edwards House 2019 Landmarked Home Calendar. It's our 3rd year we've been doing it now. They're always very successful. They are at Hoff Cleaners. They've been nice enough to sell them for us, put them on their counter. So if anybody's shopping at, taking their dry cleaning to Hoff, that would be terrific. We'd like to promote them as well, and thanks. Same thing with Downers Grove, the downtown management on Curtis. They're also helping us out selling them. So they are $12. They can be found on our website. We hope, we're also a 501c3. So we've worked very hard for that. And so we've also, we also took home the Driehaus Award last year, 2017. So we're making a lot of progress. So in the loss of the Edwards House, the silver lining is homes have been landmarked, and we're still working hard to promote preservation in Downers Grove. We'd also like to thank council because you've also been a big part of it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both, appreciate that, and well said. Sometimes out of disappointing circumstances come even bigger and better things. I appreciate you sharing that. Other questions or comments of a general nature from members of the audience with respect to things not on tonight's agenda? Good evening, Dr. Goodman.
Good evening, Mayor Tully, commissioners, staff. I'm Gordon Goodman. I live at 5834 Midoff. And I just wanted to mention that Pierce Downers Heritage Alliance's winter newsletter has just come out, and we've described some of the activities of the Edwards House people, in addition to the other updates about historic preservation in Downers Grove. And we're very pleased with the way the village has moved forward on this. So you now have 24 buildings that have been landmarked in the community, and we have noted them on our website too, pdha.org, and we encourage people to provide their email addresses so that when we distribute our newsletter, we can do it in full color to them rather than the black and white editions that we get printed and mail. It also saves us a good deal of postage and printing costs if people provide their email addresses. And we hope we can bring a lot of good, interesting issues that involve the historic preservation, cultural preservation in Downers Grove, as well as the natural area preservation that the village has been so conscientious in achieving. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for the good works of your organization as well. It's appreciated. It's a fine example of many different organizations working together through volunteers and professionals to achieve a better community. Other questions or comments from members of the audience with respect to things not on tonight's agenda? Good evening, welcome.
Good evening. My name is Justin Warner, and I'm a property manager for Farmingdale North Association, which is located about 75th and Fairview. The first thing I want to do is I want to thank everyone, or hopefully someone here has something to do with Public Works, because there's an agreement between our community and the city, where the city provides service for the streets. So any repairs, any damage takes care of by them. We take care of the parking spaces. And they came through this last summer and did an excellent job of taking care of that. So we really appreciate that. The reason that we're here, though, is because of that, we have cars that go through our neighborhoods at like 50 miles an hour. And these are 20-mile-an-hour, roads. We should have thought beforehand when they were putting the streets in to ask for speed bumps to go in, but we didn't. It was a little too late. They already had their material and they put it in. I've sent, I guess you've handed out a document that I put together. Really, the two first pages are the most important. As a property manager, I sit in an office, and my office is like a fishbowl, okay? It's completely glass all the way around. So when the kids are going to school in the morning, people are going to work, et cetera, I can see what's going on. And our major concern is the kids, okay? Kids that are 7 years old, 6, 5, coming off the bus and coming home from school don't think about where they're at. And, it would be horrible if someone had run over one of those children. It's amazing that it has not happened yet, even before the roads were done. And so what we're asking briefly is if we could somehow find money in the budget for next year or something where we could put a few speed bumps into our property. We're willing to pay for it, or half of it if we need to put them in. But because they are your roads, obviously we need your permission to put them in. So that's really all I had. We did put a petition together with our members who are, interested in doing the same thing, and that's what you have. And I just want to thank you for the time.
Sure, thank you for being here. And I want to just bring your attention that we do have a traffic calming program. On the village website, there is a opportunity to fill out a packet and basically make a submission that will then go to staff and also the Transportation and Parking Commission of the village, which also handles other things, but traffic calming such as speed bumps and other mechanisms are part of that. Given that we have a written submission here, I will look over at our village attorneys whether we need to fill out the actual traffic calming application. I haven't looked at it, but we'll figure out a way to make sure that the packet is filled out, because I don't know if the petition necessarily contained everything that's supposed to be in the packet. But obviously you've brought it to our attention. And if there's something, I'm just looking at it here as I speak, my apologies. There's probably some additional information as I'm looking at it that you might want to submit, but I can also see that you have the names of the individuals, which does include a petition. So what I'm getting at is I think maybe with a little bit of work, we can take what we have that you provided to us tonight, make sure that we've dotted the i's and t's through our official program. Okay. But we do have a venue by which you can make the exact request that you're making, okay, and then it will go through a process. And in terms of funding, we're always welcome to hear folks who are interested in cost sharing.
That's great.
But the short answer is that we have a process for that. We'll make sure that this gets into it, because petitions are part of it. But I want to just point that out when you get a chance, when you get home tonight, you might want to just take a look at it. If you just put in traffic calming on the village website search bar, the application form will come up and it will provide you some additional information. But I'll make sure that if nothing else, we maybe reach out to you if there's anything that's missing from the application process, sure, that we get that. Then I think we can start that through our transportation and parking.
Okay, perfect. That's great. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for bringing it forward. Other questions or comments from members of the audience with respect to things that are not on tonight's agenda? All right, very good. Well, thank you to those that did have comments and questions. We always appreciate them. That brings us to item 5, which pertains to public hearings. And we do have a public hearing tonight. And I know this is on the topic that brought all of you here tonight on this cold November night, and that is the 2019 budget. I'm sure that's why you're all here. There are procedures for public hearings, and as indicated by my earlier comments, we like to follow our procedures. So this public hearing will now come to order. The public hearing has been called by the Village Council to consider the proposed village budget. Notice of this hearing was published in Enterprise Newspapers, Inc., aka The Bugle, on October 17th, 2018, and a certificate of publication is made part of these proceedings. I would like to summarize the procedures which we will follow for tonight's public hearing. So if you all have a piece of paper and a pen, you can write these down. There will be a test. First, Dave Fieldman, our village manager, will provide an overview of the proposed budget. Next, there will be an opportunity for members of the village council to ask questions or make comments. Next, there will be an opportunity for members of the public to make statements or comments or to submit written statements or comments for the record. Then, I will ask again if any member of the village council wishes to make a statement or a question. And then last, I will ask for a motion to adjourn the public hearing. Please note that at this hearing, witnesses will not be sworn, and a verbatim written transcript of the statements or testimony given at the hearing will not be prepared. However, a recording of the procedures will be made on village equipment and retained until minutes of the hearing have been prepared and approved by the village council. So now that we all understand what the rules of the game are, we're ready to play. We'll start with our village manager, David Fieldman. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor Tilly. Sometimes the explanation lasts longer
Longer
than
than
the
the hearing?
presentation.
Yes.
So the proposed FY19
Sorry.
the proposed FY19 budget was published on the village website several weeks ago in late September. It's been previously presented and discussed at multiple public meetings right here in these council chambers. So I will provide just a very brief overview. Here are the key points of the FY19 budget. Number one, it is a balanced budget with revenues and expenses equal, and we do maintain the recommended fund balance that is seen favorable by bond rating agencies and is part of our AAA bond rating. So balanced budget with recommended fund balance. Next key point is that there, again, for the 8th year in a row, is no increase in the property tax levy for our operations. However, next key point, there is a property tax levy increase that is required by the state to make required contributions to public safety pensions. We do fund our pensions every year in accordance with state law. Next, another reduction in village staffing while maintaining our service levels. The budget calls for a net reduction of over 3 full-time equivalent positions. In the last 10 years, we have reduced our staffing by 20% while maintaining, in general, most service levels. And finally, for the past 10 years, and then again in this next year's budget, it allows for significant investment in our infrastructure systems, streets, sidewalks, water mains, stormwater systems, nearly $25 million worth of investment. That is a very brief overview of the budget that has previously been presented and discussed, and we're happy to answer any questions the council may have.
And thank you. And on how many prior occasions has the budget previously been discussed?
Somewhere around 6 or 8, I think, is the count.
Okay. Thank you. And the reason why I say that is because I don't know if my colleagues will have any questions or comments, but to the extent they don't have extensive questions or comments, it's probably due that this is probably the 7th or 8th meeting that we've had discussing the budget. So it's not as though there's a lack of interest, it's just that this is an ongoing process that we try to have as many meetings as possible to maximize public engagement and transparency. So with that, I will go to item 2, which is to invite questions or comments from the village council. Good evening, colleagues. Questions or comments? All right, then. I will simply say thank you for the information on both the Emerald Ash Borer status as well as the sidewalk gap program. I actually thought that map was very, very helpful to see how much progress has been made and how little there really is that still remains a gap. I appreciate that. Thank you. In terms of either having a sidewalk on one side or both sides, at least one side of each street in the village. Very good. Then, now folks, it's your turn. Any questions or comments from members of the audience with respect to the proposed fiscal 2019 budget for the village of Downers Grove? I love that sound effect. That's great. It's breaking news. It's awesome. Hello again, Dr. Goodman.
Hello again, Mayor, Commissioners, and staff. I had the pleasure of attending one of your multiple meetings, the Coffee with the Council at the Fire Department's headquarters the other Saturday, and at that time we discussed the maintenance of the buffer zones in Lyman Woods. And last year, at the village council's instruction, the staff did put into the budget funds sufficient for the first year of maintenance. But we weren't so far able to spend those monies because First, we have to have an agreement that permits the village, the Park District, and the Forest Preserve District, who own the Lyman Woods property, to work with the hospital on the maintenance of these buffer zones that are on land owned by the hospital. And that hasn't been achieved yet. So I was pleased that I was assured at the Coffee with the Council budget meeting that this amount of money is sufficiently small that the manager could do it whenever he needs to without a specific line item, but it seemed to be the intention of the council at that time that this would continue to be pursued and hopefully achieved in 2019, both the cooperative agreement that would be necessary to start this work and the work of clearing out invasive species and otherwise managing these relatively small area of buffer zones, but very crucial to defending Lyman Woods from the invasion of exotic species of plants. And so I just wanted to make note of that at this time, that although it's not written into the budget,
Sure.
I think it's understood in the budget, so to speak.
Yes, and thank you, because we did in fact invite you to do that very thing at a meeting, so appreciate you being here for it. It's certainly my intention, if any of my colleagues have a different intention, they're free to speak up. The only person who will be off the hook is Commissioner Jose, who has a good excuse, he's in Disneyland. But that's certainly, I think, the intention of the council last year, and since it hasn't been accomplished, I don't see any reason why it wouldn't continue to be the intention of the council to have those dollars available if we are able to work things out. And as mentioned, it is, I believe, within the manager's authority, so there doesn't need to be a separate vote or a line item, but clearly he's heard and is hearing again that is the intention. I will follow up by adding that I have spoken very recently with the president of the DuPage County Forest Preserve Board, Mr. Cantori, again about this very topic, so we will be following up with him as well as members of staff at both the Downs Grove Park District and the, well, obviously here, and also leadership at Good Samaritan Hospital and Advocate Healthcare as needed.
That's
In fact, the
good.
manager and I had the conversation about that earlier today.
That's very good news. I think it probably would take an action of the council to ratify whatever
Yes.
cooperative agreement was
Correct.
worked out. So it would come back to this level, I think, again.
Right. I agree that an intergovernmental agreement of that nature would require a council vote, so it would be approved by a council at that level. I think mentioned last year, having some dollars set aside is a really good faith showing to our other public partners that we're willing to collaborate on this solution.
Ready and willing.
Yes, sir.
The other topic that I want to address is in our neighborhood. I live at 5834 Middaw, and that's near the south branch of the St. Joseph Creek. And the village has acquired a small parcel of marshland and keeps it in a natural state. And it is often something we like to visit as we walk along Brookbank right-of-way extended. Brookbank right-of-way extended is not paved between Jefferson and 59th Street, but there is a public path that the village maintains there. Unfortunately, over the years, there have been various improvised crossings of the south branch of St. Joseph Creek in this right-of-way. Sometimes there are boards laid across the stream, other times they're more substantial. But I think the village has had plans in their capital improvement for a stream crossing bridge there, similar to bridges perhaps that are in Ebersol Park, maintained by the Park District in our neighborhood. And I wanted to encourage the village to move ahead with that capital improvement of a bridge across that South Branch in the Brookbank right-of-way. We're expecting soon there might be additional neighbors in our neighborhood where the Nelson Meadows development has been proposed. And it's also noteworthy that Brookbank, south of 59th Street, is now a full boulevard. The village has completed the installation of the previously unpaved southbound half of that boulevard between 59th Street and 63rd Street. I'd like to see this remaining component of this really quite nice feature of our neighborhood installed within the near future. I think it's been called in the in the capital improvements plan, a South Branch of St. Joseph Crossing facility. Maybe Mr. Schofield, if he's here, who lives even closer than I do to this subject, could give the details of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Goodman.
If I could interrupt, Martin, just
course.
a note, that is project S11 in the capital community investment program. The FY19 budget includes nearly $100,000 for design work and plans $600,000 worth of improvement in 2020 on that very project.
Commissioner Roll, of
Yes,
course, good evening.
But up until now, we are not maintaining that.
That is correct.
So anything that's going on there is just the neighbors in the neighborhood.
That's correct.
So, keeping it open. Okay, thanks. Just checking because it's a liability.
Any other questions or comments from members of the public with respect to the budget? Good evening, welcome.
Hi, Chris Sarix, 1116 61st Street. And I'd just like to add briefly another perspective to what Dr. Goodman presented regarding that particular path. I would say that its priority for improvement up until about a year ago was moot, okay? The neighbors would like to have seen a better pathway. But things have changed significantly, as Dr. Goodman has noted, from the fact that pedestrian traffic going to school from the north coming down Brookbank to Jefferson, well, currently it's expected to turn west toward Hillcrest. But you're going to have junior high and high school students coming down. They'll want to go right through to 59th, take a left, go across the control crossing to O'Neill, continue south to 63rd and go west to south. So this is clearly going to be a legitimate component of the Safe Routes to School network, and it's not currently a safe route. So I'm very glad to hear that that's going to be a high priority project coming forward in fiscal 19 and 20, and it's definitely needed. Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate your comments. Other questions or comments from members of the audience with respect to the proposed fiscal 2019 budget? All right, hearing none. Thank you for those that did share their insights. We appreciate it. Now, given all the time you've had to think about it, any final questions or comments from members of the Village Council? All righty then. I will then declare this public hearing adjourned, and we will move on with the rest of our meeting. That brings us to item 6, which is our consent agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
Bertolli, I move that this council approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Are there any questions or comments from members of the audience with respect to any of the items on tonight's consent agenda? Questions or comments from members of the Village Council? Hearing none, may I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner White?
Aye.
Commissioner Earl?
Aye.
Commissioner Wallace?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye, the consent agenda passes unanimously. And brings us to item 7, which is our active agenda. We have 2 items on the active agenda tonight. First, item 7A, do I have a motion to adopt an ordinance regulating tobacco purchases in the Village of Downers Grove?
Bertolli, I move that this council adopt an ordinance regulating tobacco purchases and sales as presented.
Second.
Are there any questions or comments from members of the audience with respect to this item? This, just in case you were wondering, this is the Tobacco 21 ordinance. Good evening, welcome.
Good Good evening. My name is Allison O'Connor, and I am a member of the DuPage County community. I am a member of Reality, which is made up of students from public and private high schools across DuPage County. We see vaping as a really big issue among kids our age, and we've all come together to try and do something about it. We've learned just how harmful vaping and using tobacco products are for young people, and how a lot of marketing targets youth to make us try vaping and one day become addicted. As a resident of DuPage County, I am so happy to hear that my community is thinking about raising the legal sales age to 21, because this is something that is finally going to help people my age. It's going to make a big difference in preventing high schoolers from getting access to vapes or other harmful products, and it's going to prevent us from a lifetime of addiction to nicotine. Thank you so much for considering this policy change.
Thank you. Good evening.
Hi, I'm Natalie Ball. I am just another student who supports Tobacco 21. You may remember me from the presentation that I, along with other students from Reality, made about Tobacco 21 in June. I'm here again today to once again express how important it is for teens like myself to see this change happen in our communities. Since our presentation in June, we have learned that the percent of 8th graders and 10th graders in DuPage County who are using vapes has tripled in the past 2 years. The rise in vaping is a big problem in many high schools, and it needs to be addressed now. We know that Tobacco 21 policies are a proven way to solve and help this problem. So thank you for listening to our concerns, and hope that Downers Grove joins the list of places that are putting our health and success first.
Thank you. Good evening, welcome.
Hi, I'm Karina Gobis, and I'm part of the DuPage County Student Group Reality, here to advocate for Tobacco 21 as well. Tobacco 21 is no longer just about the smoke coming from a brown bud, but as well as the smoke coming from a metal pen, vaping. Having such an age restriction will largely limit the most vulnerable and largest users of these products, teenagers. By passing such an ordinance, it will put that needed barrier between seller and young buyers, lip and pen, curiosity and addiction, and especially the contagious cycle of peer pressure. As of today, there are over 360 cities and counties that have passed Tobacco 21, including our neighboring towns such as Glen Ellen, West Chicago, Aurora, and Bolingbrook. Clearly, this is where our future is headed. Join us and be a part of such a grandiose movement. Be the next piece in this massive domino effect, because this will be our future. A Tobacco 21 policy in Downers Grove will encourage other communities to pass an ordinance as well. Please consider this to allow for a future where the following generation shall uphold an image of self-dignity and health. Thank you.
Thanks to all three of you. Appreciate your impressive advocacy on this topic and your passion. Thank you. Other questions or comments from members of the audience with respect to this item? Questions or comments from members of the Village Council? Commissioner Waldeck, good evening.
Thank you, Mayor.
You can't possibly top that, so you might want to tread carefully.
No, in our last meeting, when this was when it was on first reading, I had concerns about the possession factor, and I wanted to think about it, and I have. I thank the students for coming out last time, months ago and tonight. And there are controlled substances that you can debate are good or bad. Tobacco and vaping, there isn't a single solitary redeeming value to any of that. And protecting our youth as best we can. I'm in total support of this measure, including the possession factor. Almost wish we could do it for adults, but they're already addicted. So I'm in full support of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions or comments from members of the council? Hearing none, may I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner White?
Aye.
Commissioner Earl? Aye. Commissioner Wallace?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. The matter passes unanimously, and I guess we've joined that domino effect. Moving right along to item 7B. We were talking about tobacco, now it's time to talk about liquor. Item 7B, do I have a motion to adopt an ordinance amending off-premise consumption liquor license classification requirements as presented?
I move the council adopt an ordinance amending off-premise consumption liquor license classifications requirements as presented.
Second.
Questions or comments from members of the audience? Questions or comments from members of the Village Council? Hearing none, may I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner White?
Aye.
Commissioner Earl?
Aye.
Commissioner Wallace?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye, that matter also passes unanimously, and that brings us to the end of our active agenda, and right on to item 8, which is our first reading of our workshop agenda. We have a boatload of items on tonight's workshop agenda. The workshop or first reading agenda is a less formal portion of our meeting where items are presented for discussion and consideration purposes only. No formal action or vote will be taken on any of these items at this point in time. We change things up a little bit. Typically, we ask our village staff to make an initial presentation on each of the items. Then we go to the village council for questions or comments or additional information. And then we'll turn it over to the audience for questions or comments from you as well. So with that, for the bevy of items that we have tonight, we'll start back again with Mr. Fieldman. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor Tully. Thank you. The first item on tonight's first reading agenda is a motion estimating the 2018 aggregate property tax levy. And here making the annual presentation of this item is our Deputy Village Manager, Mike Baker.
Good evening, Mr. Baker.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. This item has a staff report that provides more detailed information, but for the purposes of summarizing the tax levy, what you can see on the screen is a table that is presented in the budget document and matches the presentation earlier regarding the budget public hearing, where we show how the village components of the property tax levy, the components in white represent the operations levy, and you can see those are remaining flat from last year to 2017 to 2018. And the portions in green represent the pension levies, showing the amounts required that the village will contribute to meet the state law requirements related to public safety pensions. In terms of the village portion of the property tax levy relative to all of the other entities that appear on a typical tax bill, you can see the village represents about 9.6%. And that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. I realize this is something that we've been discussing for a number of meetings, but if there are any questions or comments from members of the village council with respect to the presentation, which by state law we have to give in a certain fashion. All right, hearing none, we're going to reserve all that time for folks in the audience. Any questions or comments about the tax levy? Okay. Next item, please.
Is an ordinance amending certain traffic and parking provisions. Here to present background information on this item is our Public Works Director, Nan Newland.
Good evening,
Good
Ms. Newland. How are
evening,
you?
Mayor and Council. I have an ordinance to present this evening that's related to traffic and parking regulations in the village. Related to the traffic regulations, staff has been working with our Transportation and Parking Commission to study areas of the village where we have uncontrolled intersections. And we are here to present stop control for 4 of those intersections this evening. 2 of them are in the north part of this. This is basically the southwest area of the village. The northern area is the Hobson Triangle, and you'll see the 2 circles to the south. That's in the Prentice Creek area. The 2 intersections include Leonard at 61st Street and Leonard at 62nd Street. In this case, we're proposing that 61st and 62nd will stop for Leonard. In Prentice Creek, we're proposing Puffer and Oxford to both stop for Midhurst. Staff did complete a traffic study for all 4 of these intersections, presented at the TAP meeting, and we did have residents appear and give us positive recommendations for these areas. The TAP did unanimously vote for the approval of these 4 stop controls. I'm showing here the stop control at Leonard and at Midhurst. The second item was a petition that was brought to us. This is up in the Esplanade area. It's a little bit dark to see on this exhibit here. This is at Lacey and Wood Creek. What's happening right now is we're getting some parking on the south side of Wood Creek, just west of Lacey. And that is interfering with some traffic operations in this area where we have a left turn lane. So what we're proposing is a no parking on the south side of Wood Creek for a distance of about 300 feet west of Lacey. This item was brought to us, like I said, as a petition and is supported by the developer of this area. And TAP also approved this item unanimously, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you. I suspect that it's due to the increased activity and presence of folks in that area due to recent development, is what I'm guessing.
I believe there's also some student parking there with the Midwestern program, but they didn't identify other available parking that they can be using.
Got it, thank you. Questions or comments from the council? Questions or comments from members of the audience? Thank you, Nan.
Thank you, Mayor. The next several items, items C through H, have to do with the planned expansion of St. Mary of Gostin Parish and School. Here to present background information on these items is our Community Development Director, Stan Popovich.
Good evening, Mr. Popovich.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, council members. As Manager Thielman noted, the next few items have to do with the rezoning, special use, and alley vacations for St. Mary's of Gostin at 440 Prairie Avenue. St. Mary's of Gostin is just on the east side of town along Fairview Avenue, a little bit north of the BNSF railroad tracks. The campus you can see here is divided principally by Prairie Avenue, and it consists of multiple parcels separated by some public alleyways as well. We're going to begin our focus on the north side of Prairie Avenue on the north campus. In this graphic, you can see the existing school outlined in yellow, and there's an existing single-family home on the east side of the property there. So we're going to look over here at this side in the next slide. This is again the house and the school. The school's in yellow. St. Mary's is proposing to add an addition shown here in yellow and purple. If I get my colors straight. The new addition would house a new gym, multi-purpose dining area, increase handicap accessibility to the property, and provide some storage for the gymnasium uses as well as school uses. There's no anticipated increase in enrollment. The addition is principally used for after-school activities and gym activities, and to try to keep all the activities on this side of Prairie Avenue instead of going over to the church for some activities. With regard to stormwater, there's currently a basin on the property just north of the school there. It ties into a pipe that is within the public alley there. What's proposed to happen with the new addition would be all stormwater would be piped down into an infiltration trench, and then that trench would tie into the pipe along the alley. There would be a restrictor on the pipe to restrict the amount of flow that would be going into the existing pipe. The petitioner is requesting 3 variations associated with this petition. The first variation are these architectural features that come out of the building there and extend into the street right-of-way, or street setback, my apologies. The second variation is a front porch addition here. There's a handicap ramp, and so this is really dead space between the ramp and the building. Probably not going to get much grass to grow in there, so they just want to put a patio and a little area there outside. What you can see here in this elevation is on the left-hand side is the existing school. There'll be some improvements to that facade, and then the addition, the gym additions on the right. You can see the 3 architectural features here throughout the building, and then the patio deck area would be there next to the ramp. The third request is a setback request on the north side. You can see the existing property lines in green. There's a 14-foot wide alley that runs north of this school, the Prairie Gears Alley. St. Mary's of Gostin is requesting a vacation of the alley adjacent to the property. The neighbor at 435 Gears has requested their half of the alley. So then this would then create an alley that would be vacated like this to St. Mary's, and then we would have a 7-foot setback from that new property line where 13.2 feet is required. So that's where the variation request is on the north side there as well. If we look at the elevation here, the existing school building is on the right. The new school building is on the left of this dashed line here. Right there would be where the variation is requested. This is the 1-story portion of the building, so this is the storage rooms. The gymnasium is the 2-story section there as well. If we look at the alleys that are being requested for vacation, again, this is the Prairie Gears Alley that runs at north side of the school and north side of the addition. The request would be to vacate this portion of the alley, St. Mary's of Gostin, and this little portion to the 435 Gears property. All the alleys would have easements placed on them per the direction of the village staff and also the utility companies. The fact that there's easements on there precludes any addition off the north side of the building towards on Douglas Road because of the alley and the easements that would be required to maintain the utilities along those, within those alleys as well. The north-south alley here is the Douglas Gears Alley. It is surrounded entirely by St. Mary's of Goston properties that are owned by them. So this entire alley would be vacated to St. Mary's of Goston and split between these three properties. There's currently a driveway that is within that alley that serves the property at 445 Gears. If we move to the south side of Prairie Avenue, this is the existing church campus on the south campus there. Again, there's an alley here. This is the Wilson Prairie Alley. It's extensively used by the church. So the property, there's an access drive to the parking lot off of Prairie. There's no access off of Wilson, but there's a walking path there that you can get back to the church. Again, completely used and surrounded by St. Mary's of Goston. And then the east alley, which is the Prairie Fairview Alley, again, extensively used by St. Mary's for access to their parking lot and to the playground there along Fairview Avenue. St. Mary's of Goston is also requesting a rezoning of the church and the school properties to an INP1 classification. That's a neighborhood scale institutional public district. This would be an appropriate zoning classification for a school in this location of this size in acreage. They are not requesting a rezoning on the still outlined green properties, so those would remain R4 single-family residential. The proposal continues to support the operations and improvements of a private school. As noted in the comprehensive plan, it minimizes impact on residential neighborhoods, and it facilitates some high-quality facilities here for school-age children and the church as well. During the Plan Commission meeting, two concerns were expressed. The first was concerned about stormwater. I explained earlier in the presentation about how that is being addressed. The second concern was about afternoon pickup. I know it can get a little crowded there with the buses and parents picking up. So St. Mary's is working with the village to explore options to improve that, including potentially reducing the number of buses that service the school. The village has taken an active role in police enforcement, education of parents to let them know where they need to pick up their children, where they need to be dropped off. And then the village will work with the St. Mary's of Goston if there's any improvements to the striping out there that needs to happen as well. During the Plan Commission meeting, they found that the standards for rezoning and special use were met. The alley vacation policy notes that there's 3 questions or comments that for council consideration. Those are listed in the manager's memo for the alley vacations. The last being the compensation for the right-of-way. That's a council direction. There is no required compensation for St. Mary's of Goston, but compensation is required for the Gears property owner. Staff is looking for some council discussion and direction on the alley vacations, specifically with the issue of compensation, if any of it is required. I'm here to answer any questions. Additionally, the petitioner, Terry Odekirk with St. Mary's of Goston, and some other representatives from St. Mary's are here as well. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Stan. If the petitioner would like to add to the presentation, by all means, you're welcome to do so.
Good evening. My name is Terry Odekirk, and I am the parish manager for St. Mary of Goston, and I have with me Father Jim Schwab, who is the pastor for our church. I just want to make a few comments. First of all, St. Mary's has been in the community since 1891. We currently have 2,700 families that are registered as parishioners, and we have set 60 ministries that those families service here at our church as well as in the community. We have a lot of outreach from those ministries into the community. We also run a school that has 420 students currently enrolled from preschool all the way through 8th grade. And we also use our school building for our religious education program, which also takes care of another 500 students on a weekly basis through the school. So the building project really is there for 2 purposes. We're looking to add a lunch area for the children. As Mr. Popovich said earlier, currently the children are crossing the street, busy Prairie Avenue, to go to have lunch in the basement of the church. This addition is partially to accommodate having a lunchroom where the children can stay in the building and not have to cross. We take them over in 3 different groups, so you get 6 different crossings in about an hour and a half, so you can imagine what that looks like. We also are looking for other multi-purpose uses for that particular space, both for the school as well as for the church at large. We have so many ministries. We do need meeting spaces for after-school timings. The ability to have the swing also with a separate entrance will give us the ability to lock down the school when school is not in session, so that all of those after-school activities, primarily basketball, volleyball games, and any other big group meetings that are occurring in that side of the school, we'll be able to lock down the school and have another safety net there so that people are not able to roam through the building. We are also looking at expanding our current gym. Today, our gym is only the size of a grade school-sized gym, and because we are servicing children up to the 8th grade, we really do need a junior high-sized gym. The building is in need of a lot of major repairs, so it would be kind of silly to do those repairs and not take advantage of trying to get the expansion at this time, since about a third of our school is junior high size, or junior high aged children. The concerns that Mr. Popovich brought from the last meeting, the traffic concerns, we have been working with the village for over 3 years, trying to implement lots of options and best practices to make as less traffic congestion as we can, especially at the pickup time in the afternoon. We have an ongoing plan. We've been meeting regularly, and definitely for the 2019-20 school year, we want to come up with a proposal, and we have some good ideas on the plan that we're working with the village on. And then I thought Mr. Popovich did a great job showing you how we are handling the water, stormwater system. We know it is a big addition that we're trying to squeeze into a piece of property with every single piece of the property being utilized and staying within what the ordinances are for the village. Certainly, we've worked with the utilities, and we are trying very hard to get the most out of the space and still be good stewards in the neighborhood. So we certainly understand where concerns are, but we think we've addressed them all, and we are working we had 6 different plans that we took to the village to make sure that we work through as many of the, especially stormwater issues that may come up with this project. So we appreciate your consideration of the petition, and we hope we have your support. We think it'll be a great addition to the community that we are in. I do have with me, Father, and I do have our architect as well as the civil engineer that worked on the plan, so if there's any questions for us, we'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you. Thank you both. Good to see you, Father. Any other comments or questions in support of the petitioner, and not from the public, but on behalf of the petitioner? Otherwise, I'm going to go to the village council for questions or comments. Okay, just wanted to make sure. We'll come back to the public in a minute. What's that? We'll come back to the public in a minute. This is the formal petitioner. Okay, very good. Thank you for the presentation. Questions or comments from village council? Commissioner Earl?
No.
You just had a perplexed countenance there.
No.
Let's hear from the audience. I'm sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
Commissioner Waldeck.
Gee, nobody else first? Okay. I think the rezoning is definitely appropriate, and as well as the special use. As far as pickup for the students, it's always been a problem, and it's not like, from what the petitioner said, there's no expected increase in the number of students, so the pickup problem is going to be there regardless of what happens. So that's going to be an ongoing challenge regardless of what we do. I have no problem with the alley vacations. The only question I had was the private property owner. Would they be interested in the alley vacation but for the this project from St. Mary's? Would they want the alley vacation anyway, or?
They had not approached the village prior to this petition, but when St. Mary's went and approached them to talk about their project and explore the alley vacation, that's when they expressed their interest.
Okay, so...
Just to interrupt, if the adjacent neighbor had just wanted to vacate that portion of the alley, that would create a difficult issue.
That's correct. So
I'm not sure it would meet the policy.
And in this case, at this location here,
right
there, we don't vacate in the middle of an alleyway
Right.
like this way unless it vacates the whole
Right.
street.
My point being is, I don't think that the neighbor had the opportunity to make the decision one way or the other until St. Mary's requested as part of the project. I suppose the neighbor could have said, no, thank you.
Correct.
Right. So it created an opportunity that didn't previously exist, is I guess where I'm going.
Well, that was kind of
Yep.
the answer I expected anyway, but had to ask. The project in and of itself, I mean, in our village, you know, the village has its role, police, fire, public works, maintaining some human services and the like. But what attracts people to Downers Grove is not just that, but the fact that we have great parks and we have great schools. And schools actually attract and are attracting good residents, keeps us in good standing. So I think projects that improve our parks, improve our schools, improve our destinations are very positive and well worth supporting. The gym, I'm sure, is not just for the students themselves, but having been I'm a St. Joe's parishioner, so forgive me. But we've gone to one another's gyms and we travel around because of basketball and various sports, and it's impressive when people come from outside of the village to come to play in our gyms and hopefully get defeated. So it's also impressive. So I think this is a good project. It's something I can support. The question I have is the waiving of fees as it pertains to the private property, because that owner was kind of forced into the situation, and I'd like to see a resolution of that. You know, if I don't know what the rest of the council thinks, if they're planning on waiving fees or not, but if they plan on waiving fees, you know, I don't know. I'm not quite comfortable going after the individual property owner who was put in this particular position. So that's the question I have right now.
And just to address that, because I understand your concern, Commissioner, but I think that the private property owner had the option to decline, and St. Mary's would have had the entire vacation. So no one's being forced to do this. I think the property owner wants that additional space and is willing to make the investment. If they were not interested in it, they would simply decline, and St. Mary's would then be, if everything were to go forward, would be the owner of the whole thing.
Well, the
policy doesn't require people to do it. It requires us to give them the option.
No, it does give them the option, and I think but for the project, there would be no interest.
Well, there'd be no option.
True.
But I just want to be clear. I don't think we're forcing anybody to
No, we're
do
not.
anything
We're
they
not.
don't
We're
want
not.
to
We're
do.
not. We're not forcing. Certainly not. But you know, if we decide to waive one, I wonder about the fairness of waiving on the individual property owner.
Different question.
That's the question I have.
Well, that's a different question.
And something for discussion.
That's a different question, and it's something for discussion. But I just wanted to be clear that we're not forcing anybody.
No.
It's a choice by the property owner. The real question is, we have a policy that allows the council discretion to waive certain fees for not-for-profits.
I just want to maybe add some clarity to that. There's actually two policies, one that applies directly, it's a vacation policy, and a fee waiver policy, which is really provides some background. The vacation policy reads, among other things, the village council shall determine the amount and type of compensation, if any, to be required as a condition of the vacation. The fee waiver policy just informs, could help inform this decision, and notes that not-for-profit, charitable, religious, and public service organizations are eligible for fee waivers.
Right, which is, again, creates the opportunity for the request. But the outcome is, as you point out, at the discretion of the village council. So that's the issue.
That's all I have.
Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, actually, I have a question for St.
Sure.
Mary's.
Didn't think you'd get off that easy, did you?
Looking at the map, and because I live just out of the picture of this map, and I know the neighbors are going to ask, you have currently 2 properties on Gears, and you're going to pick up the alley easement in between them, but you're not including those in any site design or any, or changing the zoning right now into the INP zoning classifications. Can you tell me what you have planned for those properties, or why you're choosing not to consolidate those in with everything else right now?
I'd be happy to address that.
Thank you.
Please, that way everyone at home can hear you as well.
Sure.
Thank you.
Right now, when we look at those properties, we have looked at the feasibility of using them as part of an expansion, and because of a lot of additional issues that would come into play, i.e. parking, we have chosen not to use it for this expansion. With that said, we don't know that we have any future use for it to join it to the school, and at some later date, we may choose to take a look at, is it property we want to hold on to or not? So that is why we chose not to put it into this particular rezoning request, as well as we are consolidating some of the lots. We're keeping those as outliner lots at this point in time, just to give us the flexibility if we decided we did not want to use it for school property.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the council before turning it over to the audience? I just have one, and that is, I agree there's really 4 items to look at here. One is the rezoning, which, in my opinion, the section of our ordinance 12.030.1 has been met. The special use as well is, in my opinion, clearly met. We have a vacation policy, which I'm glad we've had for a number of years, because sometimes we get these requests and we didn't have a clear policy to guide the decision of the village council in the vacation of public property and any compensation that might be required. I think it's worked pretty well over a number of years now, so that not only does it guide our decision, but the public is able to see the process by which we make a decision to vacate or not, and whether to require any compensation. But clearly the question of whether to vacate or not, I believe our policy has been satisfied in terms of its criteria in that regard. The only question, I agree with you, Commissioner Waldeck, is the exercise of discretion by the village council with respect to the fee waiver. And part of the reason why we have the policy is so that when there is a vacation, the public has an idea and an understanding on a transparent basis as to what it is that we're giving up and to whom and why and so on and so forth. So even if we end up waiving a fee like this, it's all done in a very open and transparent way, and everyone understands what the magnitude of it is. So I appreciate that process. We often get requests from not-for-profits and faith-based organizations and others for fee waivers of various types. As the village manager mentioned, there is a policy that expressly addresses this. I often, in other contexts, authorize these all the time. Given the amount and the situation and other circumstances, I'm leaning towards waiving the fee is where I'm at right now, but we're not voting on this tonight. So we'll have the opportunity to think about it and discuss a little bit more, and of course would like to hear from the audience. And with that, we will do that right now. Are there questions or comments on this item from members of the audience? Good evening, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. My name is Mike Prescott. I live at 4732 Fairview Avenue. And if you look at the map, if you want to point, you see where I'm at. You got a pointer there. You know where I'm at? There you go, with the house right above it. All right, so now you got a visual of where I'm at. Anyways, as far as my notes goes, congratulations on expansions and the church and everything else. As many years they have been in the community since 1891, that's something to be proud of. They have brought a lot to the community, without a doubt. Although I stand in front of you that I don't have the credentials that the people have spoken before me, or you or yourself, but I am a homeowner. For 18 years, I've lived in that building, and during the 18 years, we've had complications. All I want to do is heighten the awareness the complexity and the complications. More specifically, if you look at the 7 pieces and the rezoning that you have in place now, it's complicated, and how big this thing is. Obviously, as you know, I am not in support of this. More specifically, in the meetings we had before, we talked about vaults, we talked about water retention, movement, and what have you. Now, why I'm here, and the complications, is that my house, and the house is close to me, every time there's a substantial rain, we have a vast amount of water in our basements. We've put tons of money in our basements. We've tried to push that water away, but the pressure keeps on coming. Why I'm here is that with this building, my fear is that additional water not being retained is going to find its way back into my basement, one way or another. They talk about vaults. They talked about extended vaults, putting new vaults in. One question is that those vaults that have been in there since 1970s, have they ever been checked? I'm sure they're probably full over 50 years of debris. Even though we've talked about putting in new vaults, extended vaults on top of other ones, I fear, and what I understand, those will not solve the problem from all the water coming down that runway. In the back of my yard, Mayor, is that there's a manhole there, and from that manhole up to the church, there's an 8-inch line that's been there for many years. Now, the 8-inch line, all that water retention coming down there, currently does not support the water flow, and based on this construction and what I've been told, will definitely not support more water being flowed through there. The manhole itself, that pops off, and the manholes you see around the area, down that lower sections, they come up. Now, that manhole weighs about 300 pounds, plus or minus. I don't know, you guys can probably detail that. But there's a lot of pressure coming up and pushing that manhole up into, and all that water comes down my driveway and into my, just not mine, but in my neighbors as well. Historically, that's always been a problem. I understand that. I moved in the house somewhat knowing that, but here I am not, I'm only one voice. And if I only have one voice at this setting, I feel confident that I'll just be heard. And I'm good with that. And let you make the decisions and where you go from here. But I want to make sure when those decisions are made and all the ordinance that have been placed, that have been changed, all the variances that have taken place to make this happen, you might solve the problem now. You might think you got it. But can you guarantee it that will solve it? Can you guarantee it from years down that you're going to solve the property? I might move, all right? But I have to tell my new homeowners that might buy my house of all the history that we've had here. It's the right thing to do for me to tell them. Will I be able to sell that house after I tell them all the problems we've had? Well, it limits the possibilities. All I want to do is stand in front of you, the mayor, the commissioners, to tell you that I am a homeowner of Downers Grove, Illinois, and I am one voice. Please listen. Please look at all the facts and everything that we've talked about prior to this. To break all this down, we talked about the Park District, the water coming down to the alleyway. All right, one area of concern or possibility to push that water even further into the Park District. But because the Park District and the village are two different entities, they're not tying those lines together to make sure that water continues to flow. It stops in front of my house. We talked about the parking and the buses. Big complications. I know there's a plan in place, and I'm glad to hear it. Will it solve the problem? I don't know. 2,700 families was spoken about before. That is a significant number of families. People coming and going on that street, day in, day out, 7 days a week. It's a busy school. It is. You got a lot of families, you got activities happening there. I'm not advocating to stopping the activities and the sports for the kids and everything else. I want to make sure it's safe for them as well, just not myself. That crosswalk is always a concern. You put even more expansions down there, you can color it as bright as yellow as you want. It's not going to solve the traffic pattern and the kids walking across the street. Doctor here was talking about his little neighborhood, about all the kids running around in the 50 mile per hour, putting speed bumps in. I don't have the answers. But I ask all of you to make sure you do the due diligence and look at all the aspects before you put this online and you give them a go-ahead to make this happen. What's the alternative? I don't have one. Do you use the other properties that they have available to them? Do they go the other way? Do they use their parking lot? All right? All big ideas. But the bottom line is I'm here as a homeowner and I'm worried about the water retention in my basement and my property. And if I have one voice, please, hopefully I've been heard. That's all I have.
Thank you,
Thank you, Mayor.
Prescott. You have been heard, and I want to at least respond a little bit, not respond, but to add a little bit to the conversation, because you raised good points. The special use criteria that we have, and I wasn't trying to do anything other than find it while you were speaking, and this is section 12.050H of our village ordinance, chapter 28, our zoning ordinance. The approval criteria for a special use, just to summarize, basically says that the special use cannot be recommended for approval unless, number one, it's expressly authorized as special use for the district in which it is located. Obviously this is, because it's already there. Number two, that the proposed use, the proposed location is necessary or desirable to provide a service or facility that is in the interest of public convenience and will contribute to the general welfare of the neighborhood or community. Again, I think that goes without saying because it's been there. I don't think that's in serious debate. The point that you raised that is the salient one, which is subsection H3, that the proposed use will not, in a particular case, be detrimental to the health, safety, or general welfare of the persons residing or working in the vicinity or be injurious to property values or improvements in the vicinity. That's a fair point in a special use analysis, but if you're talking about the use itself, and the use here isn't changing, it's basically the same use, it's an expansion of the use, which to me really brings in a different criteria. And what you're saying, and what we're hearing you loud and clear, is that our stormwater management ordinance and how the building and construction is accomplished must either mitigate or avoid the concerns that you're raising. And I only raise that because the specific point that's before us tonight is the special use. But yes, there is a stormwater component to this. Yes, there is a parking and traffic and public safety element to it, as there is with just about every project that's ever come before this council for the last 16 years. So I hear you, we do hear you, that is not lost on us. Fortunately, we have good people in this community that specialize in these areas, and our staff, I should say, as well. That is a high concern. I suspect that if Commissioner Barnett gets an opportunity, he might speak to the issue of where we've been going and further restrictions in our stormwater ordinance, which are designed to not create any new problems, and wherever possible, actually minimize them or mitigate them. So I just wanted to make that distinction of what our approval criteria is, and then what you're raising, which is related, but it is really about implementing effectively our stormwater ordinance requirements, which are significantly stricter than the county's stormwater ordinances, and in fact, I would argue fairly stricter than most communities, and achieving what your goal is basically to do no harm. And in that regard, I wanted to add that clarification, but also say, yes, we hear you loud and clear.
Well said. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. That's all I have. Any questions of me? Thank you.
No, and again, we're not making any decision tonight.
Right.
So we'll have an opportunity to percolate on everything. Thank you. No pun intended. Good evening. Welcome.
Good evening. I'm Emily Tyson. I'm at 435 Gear Street. Our house has been there since 1894, so just 3 years after St. Mary's. I've appreciated how St. Mary's has worked with the neighbors to let us know what's going on there. I share my neighbor on Fairview's concerns about stormwater. We get flooding in our basement too, but I don't otherwise oppose the project. It's just our interest in acquiring The easement is that, my understanding was that if they acquired the easement, then that would allow them to build a little bit bigger based on the changes in the setback requirements. No one can build there because it's public utility, but our interest is sort of containing the size of what goes there now. But when we moved in, we knew there was a school behind us, and that was fine. St. Mary's has been good neighbors to us since we've been there. We don't have the traffic issues just because of where we're located. So we look forward to continuing to work with St. Mary's as the project goes forward, if it goes forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Other questions or comments on this item from members of the audience? I was going to be deeply disappointed if you didn't say something.
My name is Jim Crawford. I live at 201 56th Street. I'm very sympathetic. I'm at the lowest point in Deer Creek. I flood all the time too, so I certainly share your sympathies. Before I begin, though, I just want to say congratulations and thank you. Don Rhodes, who used to cover this auspicious hall, got transferred by the Tribune, and one of her first quotes that her new area that she was covering, she talked about the restrictiveness and the lack of flexibility that city council had for public comments and their citizens being involved, and what a stark contrast it was from leaving Downers Grove and seeing that. So once again, thank you for allowing such a robust conversation. I know sometimes it's harder than other months to allow that to happen. I'm just going to go real quick. I'm an active member of St. Mary's, as many of you know. I love the churches and all this part of the community. As a person who actively works with those 700 active members, we're constantly scheduling and moving things around. Friday nights, we have 65 homeless in our basement of our church. Many times we'd like to hold a movie or a lecture or some type of event that'd be on that Friday night as well, but we don't have enough space. This allows that kind of flexibility. So not only do we get the safety for the kids, consolidation into one large participative community at lunchtime, we get great flexibility that goes with it. And we've got a great team that are doing the planning and the execution side to help alleviate those concerns that we all are hearing very loud and clear. And we just would like to say thank you very much for the support. And once again, thanks again for allowing a robust conversation. Take care.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments. Always nice to see you. Other questions or comments from members of the audience? Any further thoughts, reflections from members of the Village Council? Commissioner Barnett, how are you
Thanks,
tonight?
Mayor. I'm good. How are you?
Splendid, thank you.
I did want to touch on the stormwater issue. That's one of the things that I always end up, when my mouse works, trying to focus on. There is a fair amount of discussion in that in the meetings from the 10-1 Plan Commission meeting in particular, and we have to assume the best, and the engineering would suggest that this has been thought out and planned for, that it should not increase downstream runoff during most storm events. There's a caveat, right, in the engineering world, somebody can screw it up, screw up the math. But it's not something that's been overlooked. I think it's important, as the mayor said, to recognize that our ordinances at the village, ordinances that the county put in place, are designed to try and prevent people from making the matter worse. And in this case, there's been apparently a fair amount of effort, and if you read through that, it should cause, under most situations, an improvement in what the neighbors see in most storm events, and because there's a system designed for some of the worst events. So I have a lot of confidence that will be the result, and I'm really not worried about it. I think apparently there's been a lot of good work done on that. As Commissioner Waldeck said, I'll say it a little differently, it's great when there's a community component, a neighborhood, a school, a church, anything that's vibrant and growing, because it helps all of us. And I think you guys have done a fantastic job of trying to work within the intents of our ordinances. We have 18,000 parcels, something like that, in town. And so to expect that there would be some situations where there are variances required to try and make things work, I think is entirely reasonable. There's a ton of really good work. It's obvious from this application. And I'm looking forward to this thing going forward. Just to touch, because Dave, you said you were looking for some direction on the vacation policy components. From my standpoint, I don't really want to spend this application debating the vacation policy. That's sort of a separate conversation in my mind. Past history has suggested that nonprofits would be waived and others would have to pay. I'd like to continue that. If we want to take up the subject matter separately from an application before us, that's kind of a different issue. So I'm inclined to try and waive the fees for St. Mary's and charge any other landowners that want to acquire a piece of the vacated property. So that's it, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other Further reflections, comments?
Can I just ask real quickly what the history of our waiving fees is? Is that typically something we've done in the past?
So it's actually not a fee waiver, so I'm just going to clarify the language. It's been decided under the vacation policy generally that private residents have been charged, for-profit businesses and industrial uses have been charged. Other governments have been either not charged or charged a percentage based on their constituency and to the degree to which their constituency overlaps with village residents.
Thank you.
Well put.
I've been practicing that one, yes.
I'd almost forgotten about that proportionality one.
Oh, I remember.
Other questions? Comments?
Real quick.
Commissioner Waldeck,
Thank you.
bring us home.
As Commissioner Barnett mentioned, about the stormwater policy, we have this do no harm, and there is a confidence that things will improve. But sometimes when there's change, there's some added opportunities, and it would be appreciated if staff would look at this project and the neighbors and mention of the Park District to see if there's anything else that we could possibly do, maybe not associated with this, but maybe something down the line where we could go further and further solve stormwater problems in the area. For instance, maybe some project in conjunction with the Park District, I don't know. But that would be appreciated, because when you have major changes like this, maybe do no harm is sufficient, but it's really not the best we can do. And I'd like to see us do if there's an opportunity to do better, let's do it. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Now, if we can only come up with traffic calming that also manage stormwater, that would be really something.
Well, enough water, you trend.
No, there you
Calm
go.
traffic.
How's the potholes keeping
That's not my favorite kind of traffic calming device. All right, very good. Thank you. As mentioned, we're not voting on this tonight, so the council has an opportunity to consider it between now and when it will be voted on.
We're looking to put it on for next week. I just want to confirm that what we are planning on doing based on tonight's discussion is the ordinances vacating rights-of-way will have no charges for the rights-of-way for St. Mary's and the $1,400 charge for the private residents.
Yes. At least that's my inclination.
Okay. Thank you.
I don't hear anything different. Thank you. Next item, please. As they say, but wait, there's more.
There is more. I think this next item will also be presented by Stan Popovich. Stan.
Welcome back.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Manager Fielman. The next item is, I can figure out the clicker here, is going to be a special use request at 2501 Ogden Avenue, which is at the northwest corner here on Downers Grove. Go to the next slide, you can see a close-up. It's at the intersection of Cross and Ogden Avenue. Petitioners requesting, next slide, to expand the parking lot into the grass area here on the northeast side of the property. If we go to the next slide, we can see their site plan. If we hit the next button, we'll see the area that they're going to expand into. It's a parking lot expansion to increase the capacity of the parking lot. If we go hit the next button, you'll see they're adding some green space along Cross there, and then also within the parking lot as well, and then doing some additional landscaping along the Ogden Avenue there. There's going to be two pedestrian connections, one be connected out to Cross Street. If we hit the next button, there's going to be another one out onto Ogden Avenue as required by the zoning ordinance. And so there's no proposed building improvements, but principally just a parking lot expansion to provide increased capacity, and then parking lot improvements as well to beautify the parking lot and beautify Ogden Avenue. The comprehensive plan talks about that this site is a corridor commercial designation. We should look for regional commercial retail users such as auto dealers, serve nearby neighborhoods and regional customer base, and it contemplates aesthetic improvements along Ogden Avenue, which we see as well. The Plan Commission at their meeting found that the standards for special use were met. At this time, if there's any questions on this, I can answer them for you.
Thank you. Once again, when you have a special use request for an existing use, it makes it a pretty easy decision. Questions or comments from the council?
Stan, just because I can't remember, but this seems familiar, have we done something similar to this and approved it before for this site?
Well, I believe we granted a special use a few years ago because the building had been vacant for more than the
Okay.
required,
So there
the
was-
special use had lapsed, I believe.
Okay, I remembered something and I just couldn't put my finger on exactly. I
Right.
thought, it's like deja vu all over again.
That makes it even easier when we've done it before.
Right, exactly. Thank you.
Sure. Other questions? Questions or comments from the audience? All right, thank you, Stan.
The next item is related to the project that Stan just presented. It's a resolution authorizing a First Amendment to a sales tax rebate agreement for both this property and the other Ziegler property located just east of here. Here to present information on this item is the president of the Downers Grove Economic Development Corporation, Michael Casa.
President and CEO, if I recall correctly.
I believe.
Mr.
I
Casa,
didn't mean to
how are
short you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Michael Casa, President and CEO, Downers Grove Economic Development Corporation at 5159 Mokel in downtown Downers Grove. Mayor Tully and Commissioners, I am pleased to present the First Amendment to the sales tax rebate agreement between the Village of Downers Grove and Ziegler Chrysler Dodge Jeep. In 2009, Ziegler Auto Group opened their first dealership in Downers Grove at 2311 Ogden Avenue. The village approved a sales tax rebate agreement for that project. In 2015, Ziegler acquired the property on the southeast corner of Ogden and Cross. Ziegler made improvements to the former used car dealership on that site and opened a Ram truck dealership. The eastern frontage of the site was vacant and reserved for future expansion. Several months ago, Brian Malpelli, Vice President and General Manager at Ziegler, contacted me to say they were now ready to expand again and develop the vacant portion of the site. The company is requesting a 5-year extension of the original sales tax agreement. During the 5-year period, when sales tax rebates will be provided, the Ziegler dealerships are projected to generate an average of $743,000 per year in gross sales tax revenue to the village. The projected average annual rebate payment is $381,312, with a net average annual village revenue of $358,619. The proposed First Amendment to the sales tax rebate agreement requires Ziegler to make improvements to the dealership and the parking lots as depicted on the concept plans, but no later than by December 31st, 2019. The terms of the sales tax rebate would be extended by 5 years, during which that time period, January 1st, 2019 to December 31st, 2024, the village would rebate 50% of the sales tax collected up to $700 million in annual sales and 75% of the sales tax collected in excess of $700 million in annual sales generated by the dealerships. It's an extension of the existing agreement. Ziegler is required to dedicate a sidewalk easement to the village and install a sidewalk on the property in front of their original dealership at 2311 Ogden Avenue. And all other terms and conditions of the existing agreement shall remain in full force. Ziegler is planning to develop the site in order to increase capacity. I've learned quite a bit about the automobile dealership over the years, and one thing is clear, in today's auto market, capacity equals increased sales. You don't want to say to a customer, we don't have that vehicle, we don't have the type of vehicle you're looking for, we're going to send you to another dealership in another town. I want to thank the village staff for their work on this project, and of course I want to thank our friends at Ziegler for continuing to invest in our community. Ziegler is also a great supporter of economic development. Brian Malpelli is with us today. The Economic Development Corporation strongly supports an extension of their 5-year extension of this agreement for 5 more years. And I'd be happy to answer any questions, as would Brian.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Casa. I echo the words. We appreciate the continued investment in the community. Obviously, this Looks like it can continue to be a very mutually beneficial arrangement, and I hope it has great and many years of success. Questions from the council? Say, staff and Michael, you've gotten pretty good at putting these things together. Thank you. Any questions from the audience? Very good. Again, thank you. Thank you for continuing to invest in our community.
And we will close out the first reading with more economic development activities. Here to present the last item on tonight's agenda is our Community Development Director, Stan Popovich.
Good evening again, Mayor.
Good evening, Stan.
Long time no see.
I missed you.
Thank you. It's very kind of you to say. The next item tonight is the last item here is the Plan Unit Development Amendment for 1801 Butterfield Road. The property is on the north side of town, adjacent to I-355 and Butterfield Road. It's the former Carlucci's restaurant site. The proposal is to construct a new Cooper's Hawk restaurant. The improvements require an amendment to the existing PUD. The site plan is pretty much staying the same. There's some improvements. The new building, the old Carlucci's building will be demolished and a new Cooper's Hawk will be constructed, shown here in blue. The existing access points on Lacey Road will stay. There's no new access points off of Butterfield. There's some minor improvements to the site with some additional green spaces and some additional patio and outdoor seating areas as well. And then there's also a pedestrian connection to Lacey Road as well to hopefully get more people to come over from the office buildings across the street there. The Cooper's Hawk is requesting sign allowances for the new PUD. For the amendment in the PUD, they're proposing 3 signs, 3 wall signs on the building. The west facade faces the tollway, so they're requesting to put their tollway monument sign on the building. There's a lot of vegetation along the tollway there, so they're requesting to move the tollway sign from a freestanding monument sign to the building. The north sign is permitted by right, and then the sign on the west side, which is shown here, is over the front door, so this will help direct traffic to the front door there as well. So they're asking for that variation within the PUD there as well. And then lastly, there's an existing monument sign here for Carlucci that was approved as part of the PUD when the whole Esplanade came in, and so they would replace that sign with a Cooper's Hawk sign matching size. So that's why there's additional requests on the sign size allowances. With regard to the comprehensive plan notes continued support for major office developments, promote outlot redevelopment, leverage the unique location here to attract new tenants, which I think we're doing at this location, and redevelopment focused on attracting a regional customer base, which I think Cooper's Hawk does. And then the Plan Commission at their October meeting found that the request met the standards of approval as shown here, and there are also Cooper's Hawk representatives here if there's any questions that you might have that I'm unable to answer. Thank you, Mayor.
Great. Thank you, Stan. I want to echo something that Commissioner Earl said a moment ago. This is like deja vu. I remember when we did this for Carlucci's way back when, and I am just as excited now as I was then. We're thrilled to have Cooper's Hawk in our community. Look forward to this being developed, and I think I made a comment back then when we saw the designs for Carlucci's. I couldn't wait to have dinner there, and I'll say the same thing about Cooper's Hawk. Questions or comments from the council?
How fast can you build?
I was, I think
We share in the
I think that's what I said last time.
I have a gift card.
Questions or comments from the audience? Very good. Again, thank you for choosing Downers Grove. Dr. Goodman, you're looking for a dinner invite?
Well, actually, we very much enjoyed Carlucci's when it was a part of the community, and we've very much enjoyed Cooper's Hawk in other communities.
And now you can enjoy it
And now we're
here.
very much looking forward to having Cooper's Hawk facilities here in Downers Grove, and also replacing one of our favorite restaurants with hopefully a future favorite restaurant in Downers Grove. It's nice to be able to have dinner in Downers Grove, and in the past we've been very successful in attracting good restaurants. I'm glad to see that that is continuing now. And my feeling is that it's very nice that the green space within this planned unit development just west of the footprint of this restaurant is being preserved. And the signage, although perhaps a little different than the original sign ordinance in Downers Grove anticipated matches Cooper's Hawk signage elsewhere that is quite appropriate and doesn't intrude. I'm glad to see that that monument sign in the green space to the west of the restaurant is actually being proposed for preservation, because I think it helps very much to guide traffic to the restaurant, as much or more than the signs on the building. So I'm very supportive of this plan, and I hope you will be too. Thank you.
Thank you. As you can tell, I'm on the fence about this one. Thank you. Any other questions or comments from members of the audience? All right, terrific, thank you. And
That ends our first reading tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
awesome. That brings us to item 9, which is the mayor's report. I have a couple things tonight. First of all, we want to thank Ed Earl for his service on the Library Board of Trustees. Ed, for personal reasons, had to resign not too long ago, but we thank him for his service. And we have the opportunity to appoint a successor to fill out the balance of Ed's term. And we do have a terrific candidate that I've put forward to the village council, and we have a resolution to that effect. So I will pause and ask our fine village clerk to read the resolution of appointment, and then we'll go from there. Please.
A resolution appointing Jennifer Morrow to the Library Board of Trustees. Whereas Mayor Tully has made the following appointment, now therefore be it resolved that the Village Council of the Village of Downers Grove does hereby confirm the following appointment. Library Board of Trustees appoint Jennifer Morrow to a 2-year term expiring August 31, 2020.
Do I have a motion to adopt the resolution?
Kelly, I move that this council adopt the resolution as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments from members of the council? I'll just add that, first of all, thank Commissioner Barnett for helping me interview a number of outstanding candidates for the library board. I think my only regret last time was that we couldn't appoint all of them. So the opportunity to appoint Jennifer in addition to prior appointees is terrific, as sad as we are to see Ed go. Jennifer is very impressive and will make a terrific library board trustee. I can't see that far in the room. Oh, there she is. Jennifer is here tonight, so thank you for being here. Thank you for volunteering to serve the community. You'll waste no time. I understand from the library board executive director that they're planning on swearing you in at tomorrow's meeting. So, no, we'll get you out of here as fast as you can so you can get right off to the library board. But thank you for your service. I think you'll make a terrific addition to that board, and we look forward to working with you. And as mentioned, they're going to put you to work tomorrow.
Yes, thank you very much.
Terrific, thank you. So with that, I will ask for a roll call, please.
Commissioner White?
Aye.
Commissioner Earl?
Aye.
Commissioner Wallace?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. Resolution passes unanimously. Congratulations, you are now a member of the Library Board of Trustees.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. The other item on the mayor's report that I want to mention is, as some folks may know, last Tuesday, something happened across our country. It was called the general election. And I just wanted to add congratulations to those who were elected into positions of service to our community. We have some changes in representation of those who will be representing Downers Grove in various capacities, and we'll look forward to getting to know those new representatives and working with them for the best interests of Downers Grove and beyond. So that's positive. And the other positive thing is, on last Tuesday night, the residents of the area chose for me to continue for 6 more months as mayor of Downers Grove, which was awesome. So that's great. I feel really good about that. And that ends the mayor's report. And that brings us down onto the village manager's report. Mr. Fieldman.
Thank you, Mayor Tully. No report tonight.
Thank you. That brings us to item 11, village attorney's report. I think you want to take a deep breath first, Ms. Petrarca, before you go through this list.
Yes, I am. I have
Good
several
evening.
items to present. Good evening, Mayor. An ordinance amending certain traffic and parking provisions, an ordinance rezoning certain property for St. Mary of Goston Parish and School located at 440 Prairie Avenue, an ordinance authorizing a special use for St. Mary of Goston Parish and Church located at 440 Prairie Avenue, to construct a school gymnasium and in addition with variations, An ordinance vacating a public alley adjacent to and between 4733 Douglas Road, 4725 Douglas Road, and 445 Pierce Avenue. An ordinance vacating a portion of a public alley adjacent to and between 4804 Fairview Avenue, 4806 Fairview Avenue, and 413 Prairie Avenue. An ordinance vacating a portion of public alley adjacent to and between 4733 Douglas Road, 4737 Douglas, 445 Pierce, 435 Pierce, 440 Prairie Avenue, and 428 Prairie Avenue. And another ordinance vacating a public alley adjacent to and between 440 Wilson Street, 442 Wilson Street, and 445 Prairie Avenue. An ordinance amending ordinance number 5473, authorizing a special use for 2501 Ogden Avenue to permit the expansion of an existing automobile dealership. And finally, an ordinance amending plan unit development for 31 to allow construction of a new two-story restaurant at 1801 Butterfield. All of these will be on next week's action agenda. Thank you, Mayor. That is all.
Well done. Thank you, Ms. Petrucca. That brings us to item 12, which is reserved for council member reports. This is an opportunity for members of the village council to share with those in the audience or those watching at home either items of interest in the community or other goings-on, or to report out in their role as liaisons to other public entities. So I will start to my right tonight with Commissioner Waldeck.
Thank you, Mayor. Hey, how quickly November hit us. And on November 23rd through the November 25th, there's a lot happening in our downtown. There's so much happening in the downtown, I'm not going to take the next half hour and read it to you. I strongly suggest you go to downtowndg.org and look at all the events we're having from the 23rd to the 25th. And as I look at Friday, November 23rd, right there, right at the top is the gingerbread manhunt all day long. It's my favorite. Guy must have got away last year. I don't know. There's story times. There's a procession after story to the tree lighting ceremony. There's the gingerbread house on Saturday. We got the 9th annual Small Business Saturday. That takes place all day long, and we get a lot of people who say, hey, we really appreciate our downtown. It's improved so much, and they really enjoy it and appreciate it. Well, if you do, suggest you get downtown and start, or continue shopping at our businesses and supporting small business down there. They really need it. They really appreciate it, and they'll throw out the welcome carpet for you the whole weekend. A lot of things happening, as I say. Check the website, but be sure to show up at the tree lighting ceremony and all the activities that are down there. There's going to be a Santa Claus. Once again, we arranged to have the real Santa Claus, not some helper, but we got the real guy here, so bring the kids. Thanks, Mayor.
Very exciting, Commissioner. Thank you. Commissioner Wallace, how are you tonight?
I'm so well, Mayor. How are you?
If I was any better, I'd be you.
One of my absolute favorite events is coming up, the Bonfield Express 5K. It is their 15th annual this year, which is really exciting. I believe this is the 4th or 5th year that my family has done this, and it is now a tradition. You can register online. Early registration is until this Friday, November 16th at 10 p.m. $30 for an individual, $100 for a family of 4. You can also do on-site registration at Good Sam on Saturday, November 17th from 11 to 3, or Sunday, November 18th from 11 to 3, or race day registration at the Tivoli, which is $40 for an individual on the day of. So, very exciting event. Come out and bring the family.
Very exciting. Do we know the color of shirt this year?
That is a big...
It's a well-kept secret.
That is a well-kept secret and on everyone's minds. So I'll be curious. And it's the 15th, so I don't know. I feel like I'm not sure what we're going to see here.
Well, I still have my inaugural shirt from the very first one, which is uniquely different than all the others. I don't know if I still fit in it, but I still have it. Commissioner Barnett.
I have no report, Mayor.
Thank you. Commissioner Earl.
No report tonight, Mayor.
Commissioner White.
Just a very brief report. I also registered for the Bonfield Express, and I'm going to provided an enormous community service by allowing all of you to finish ahead of me. So with that ends my report.
You just want to make me feel better.
Exactly.
Thank you.
That's my goal.
I appreciate that.
Make the mayor look good.
Right, thank you. You might need some help in that regard. I have nothing further to add, so with that, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
Martella, I move that this council adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you and good night.